Hey guys, I'm Candle, and it's time for another gaming pickups video. I have actually a pretty big stack here. I didn't intend to get this many games, but I did anyways. So, one of the things I bought sometime in the last year was a Sega Genesis, because I'd had one as a kid but didn't have one now, and I really wanted to kind of recapture those memories. And when I was a kid, I had 4 games to play, specifically just 4 games. I had Sonic the Hedgehog and Echo the Dolphin, which I already have, but I also had this one. I had Quackshot starring Donald Duck, which is obviously a Disney game. It's actually, I think it's pretty good. It's it's a lot of fun. Basically, you just play as Donald Duck. You're kind of on an Indiana Jones type adventure, kind of similar to DuckTales, but it's not directly part of DuckTales. Like you're not playing as you're not playing as any of the nephews or the Uncle Scrooge McDuck. You're just playing as Donald. Although you do have the nephews making an appearance. And but this game's a little bit hard. What's weird about it though is it plays kind of in a non-linear fashion. When you first start out, you have the option to go to one of 3 different levels, 3 different stages. You have Duckburg, you have Mexico, and you have Transylvania. And you can go to them in any order, but in order to make proper progress, you have to go to Mexico, then Duckburg, then Mexico again, and then Transylvania. And then after you complete all the way through on Transylvania, then you get a new map that kind of opens things up to go to another set of levels and so on. So it's kind of interesting in that way. Now, the other final game I had as a kid was this next one, and what's funny is when I was a kid, we had a Sega Genesis, but it wasn't actually my Sega Genesis. It was my sister's. It was a Christmas present for her. However, I still ended up being the one playing the most on it. But she had 3 games, and I had a fourth. It was my game specifically. And I remember being able to pick this game out, and I picked it out because it was probably my favorite movie at the time. The Lion King, yeah. Believe it or not, once upon a time, movie tie-in games were actually pretty damn decent, and this one is. It can be brutally hard sometimes. It's just a kind of a puzzle platformer, but it can be brutally hard at times, but it's still a lot of fun. Specifically, the second stage and I believe the fourth and fifth stages are probably the hardest ones. And the second stage is based around the "Can't Wait to Be King" song from the movie, where you've got like stacks of animals and so on. You're jumping around on all of them. And there's 2 parts to it that are really tough. For one, there are monkey puzzles where you have to jump into the arms of monkeys and they throw you around to the next monkey or whatever, and they come in 2 different colors, blue and pink. And the pink ones can change direction if you growl at them, or rather roar at them. So you kind of have to figure out, do you need to change the direction that monkey's throwing you or not? And then the second part is you are on top of I think it's like a baby hippo. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a baby hippo. I wanted to say pig, but I don't think it's an actual pig or a boar or anything. But anyways, you're on this hippo pig thing, and you're running towards the right side of the screen, and you have to jump or duck or sometimes double jump and so on to avoid obstacles. But there's not enough telegraphing of what obstacles are coming, so you can really die pretty easily. Then, of course, the next really tricky part is the Stampede section, which is kind of a break from the traditional side-scrolling platformer gameplay of the game itself, so that Simba is running towards the screen, and there's wildebeest coming everywhere, and so on. So he has to kind of dodge them in order to survive the Stampede. And then the next section was actually the section my sister could almost always never beat. I rarely ever got there myself as a little kid. I mean, I was like 5 or 6 at the time. But my sister could rarely ever beat the next stage, which was Hakuna Matata, which had a lot of like jumping on logs on waterfalls and stuff like that. So anyways, it's really good to finally have both those games back again. So the next game I did previously own as a kid, like years and years later, when my sister no longer had much interest in playing games. The Genesis was mine. It died, and my parents got me a Genesis 3. It was like $50 at Toys R Us at the time. But alongside that, for Christmas one year, I got a stack of Genesis cartridges, just loose cartridges. No manuals, no cases, nothing, just loose cartridges. I got like 10, 15 of them at a time. but one of them was probably the only sports game I've ever really enjoyed, and that is, of course, the classic NBA Jam. Yeah. And this thing looks pristine. It looks almost like it's brand new, which I think is amazing. It's got the manual and everything. Actually, all the Genesis games I got in this video came with the manual, which is awesome. And it's just it's really fun to be able to play this again. Especially, I remember all the callouts for like all the special shots and trick shots you can do, and it's really weird and interesting and fun. And speaking of weird and interesting and fun, that brings me to the infamous Mortal Kombat. Yes. The Genesis version, of course, which is superior to the Super Nintendo version because it includes blood and gore. I've never actually really played a Mortal Kombat game before. I've always kind of stayed away from fighting games because I generally suck at them. I'm more of a button masher rather than actual learn the combos and the moves type of person. But still, it's nice to have this game here. So, yes, Mortal Kombat. That's actually all the Genesis games I got. I pretty much nearly doubled my Genesis collection. However, that's not the end of the retro games I picked up. I also got Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, and this one also looks damn near pristine. Actually, the store I got it at had it in a plastic sleeve, but it wasn't like a very nice plastic sleeve. It's just like they cut up like a Ziploc bag and taped it over it to keep it nice and clean, which is really nice because I mean it looks really good, and even the disc looks like brand new, like no scratches, no nothing. So it's really nice. I meant to get Crash 2 because Crash 2 and Spyro 2 were the only ones I was missing out of both those trilogies, but I took a look at it and I was like, they're asking $30 for a near pristine copy of Crash 2, Green Label copy of Crash 2 on the PS1. Why would I spend that much for Crash 2 when I could spend like $10 more and get the remastered remake on the PS4? It just didn't quite make sense to me. However, I am planning on going back to this store at some point because they have a lot of really good and somewhat rare PS1 games. Like they have Suikoden, they have Breath of Fire 3, they have 3 different copies of Star Ocean: The Second Story in varying conditions. They're asking for $40 a piece for them, which I think is a little weird for the one with the kind of cracked case, but still, it's Star Ocean: The Second Story. They have 2 copies of Lunar 2, Eternal Blue, one of which, they're both the complete editions, but one of which is just the game in the case, and the other actually has like the full box and everything else. They also have Arc the Lad and the full big box and everything, and I really need to go back and get some of these games, but they're asking quite a pretty penny for it. Like, that copy of Lunar 2 with the actual big, thick cardboard box, they're asking $100 for that, and I think that is a little bit more than I want to pay, but still, they have a good selection there, so I need to go back. Another thing I picked up, which was only a couple bucks, was Dance Dance Revolution Extreme 2. Yeah. Couple gaming pickups ago, I picked up a box copy of Supernova and like 4 more Dance Dance Revolution games. I thought I had gotten pretty much all the big ones from the PS2 era, but I had missed out on one. I had gotten DDR Max, DDR Max 2, DDR Extreme, and both DDR Supernova games, but I had missed Extreme 2. I didn't realize they did a second one, so still, I got that now. And speaking of rhythm games, I also picked up a copy of Rock Band, the original Rock Band, for the 360. Now, previously, I've had Rock Band 2. I actually have the full band set for Rock Band 2. I have Beatles Rock Band, and I have the guitar set for Rock Band 4 on the Xbox One. I was really, really hoping that the original Rock Band would be one of the backwards compatible games you could play on Xbox One, because since the guitar controller for Rock Band 4 is so new, it works wonderfully, and one of my guitar controllers for the 360 is broken, the other one sort of works, sort of doesn't, but still, it's nice to be able to go through it. Really, there's not too much gameplay difference between this and really any of the other Rock Band games, other than, like, it has a different song list. But the tour is a bit more basic than what I was used to with Rock Band 2 and 4, in that you pick out a city to start at, and then you play through 5 songs in that city, then you move on to the next one, and that's just the way it goes. You play 5 songs in one city, move on to the next one. In 2 and 4, you got to flip between like a couple different cities. They had individual song sets as well as multi-song sets. Excuse me, multi-song sets where you're playing like 3, 4, 5 songs in a row. And at least as far as I've gotten so far in Rock Band 1, that doesn't happen. And if you've paid attention to my last week's video, you might know what's coming next. Last week's video was a Gamer Reader Writer video all about the Final Fantasy franchise and what I felt were my top 10 games. I stuck mainly to the main series games and no side games or anything, but because there are 15 numbered Final Fantasy games and there were only 10 slots on the list, 5 of them didn't make it. So this is my chance to talk about one of them. One of them was Final Fantasy XI. Now, this is obviously not the game. This is just a strategy guide. But the reason why Final Fantasy XI didn't make it on that list was because I never really played it. I never really got into MMOs until like the past 5-6 years, at which point Final Fantasy XI's kind of already passed. And I did attempt to play 11 once on the 360, but there were some major issues I had with it. The fact that you had to install the game to the hard drive. You had to, if you screwed up at all during the install and update phase, I had to then install the disk to the hard drive in order to get it to boot. And then I had to uninstall everything, reinstall it again, uninstall the disk. And all that took like 24 hours to try to get working. And then I got 5 minutes into the game and immediately shut it off. I just could not stand the way it was working. I do hope to eventually play it again, preferably before they actually shut it down finally on the PC, because the 360 versions and the PS2 versions are completely gone. Those servers have been shut down. You can get the game still used or whatever, but I'm pretty sure you can't play it because it requires an online connection. It's not like Star Ocean Online, not Star Ocean, Phantasy Star Online was on the Dreamcast, where you could still play it offline years and years later, which I think is awesome. All MMOs should do that by default. But anyways, so I picked up the strategy guide because it was only $5, and you can just see them over here. But I collect Final Fantasy strategy guides. It's one of my favorite franchises, so I collect the strategy guides for it. And I didn't have one for 11, and it's really weird in my mind to have a strategy guide for an MMO, because things are constantly being patched and updated, and all the content's constantly changing. In fact, to date this specific version, it even says right down here, Spring 2004 version. I don't know if it covers just the base game or any of the expansions or whatever, but it covers, I mean, it covers the game up to Spring 2004, basically. And another Final Fantasy game I got was Final Fantasy 13 on the 360. When this first came out, I got it on the PS3 because it was kind of a loyalty thing. Final Fantasy started out on Nintendo systems, but they switched to PlayStation at Final Fantasy VII and had been there ever since, with a few exceptions like 11 and the PC versions of 7 and 8. They've been with PlayStation through PS1, PS2, so when it went to PS3, I kind of felt, out of loyalty to the franchise and the history of it, I had to stick with the PS3 version. However, nowadays I'm kind of more focusing on trying to get everything Final Fantasy I can get my hands on, so that's why I got this version. Unfortunately, it's just the first one. I'm missing 13.2 and Lightning Returns for the 360, but still, it's good to have it. It's got the manual. It's got all 3 discs, which I find is funny because the PS3 version being on a Blu-ray was only 1 disc. So I find it funny that Final Fantasy 13 is on 3 discs, because they hadn't really done a multi-disc Final Fantasy since 9 on the PS1. That was 4 discs. Yeah, 7 was 3 discs, 8 was 4 discs, 9 was 4 discs. I don't know about 11. I want to say it was probably 1 disc on the PS2. It might have been 2. I don't remember any PS2 game going more than 2 discs, though. But yeah, it's nice to have it. And actually, considering that the guide for 11 says PC CD-ROM, I'm gonna guess it was probably more than 1 disc on the PC. Although I don't know how many 11 was. Now, the last 360 game I picked up is kind of infamous. It is part of a promotional campaign from, I want to say, like 2005, 2006, shortly after the 360 came out. And it's, of course, Burger King's Sneak King. Now, Burger King, as part of a promotional thing, shortly after the 360 came out, they made a trio of games, one of which was Sneak King. I can't remember what the other two were, but one of them was kind of a racing thing, and I can't remember what the third one was at all. But they were sold for only like $2-3 at Burger King locations. And these games are terrible, but they're infamously bad. And really the only reason I picked it up is because I saw it, I laughed, and it was only $1. And what I find is interesting, though, that I didn't realize at first, but you can see this little box up here. You see how it doesn't say Xbox 360, just says Xbox. And then in this box here, if I can angle it right, there we go. It says it includes both the Xbox 360 and original Xbox versions, which I find is very interesting because you would think based on that it has 2 discs, but it doesn't. It's just 1 disc, and you got both versions on there, which is really, really interesting because you don't ever see that for cross-generational games. A lot of games that come out right at the launch of a new console generation, a lot of them typically also have versions on the previous generation's hardware, and you don't see them put both versions on 1 disc. The only reason I can see that they did this is because the 360 was so new, they didn't know how many people were going to have them. Plus, the game's probably very, very small in terms of file size, and both the 360 and the original Xbox take DVDs, which can hold 4 to 8 gigabytes of data depending on whether or not it's a dual layer disc. So the next couple games I got are fairly recent releases. In fact, one of them is practically a brand new release, and that is Splatoon 2 for the Nintendo Switch. Now, if you've played Splatoon 1 on the Wii U and you hated it, don't pick this up. It's pretty much the same game. It's pretty much it really is pretty much the same game. There's not really much added. There's maybe like a couple different weapons added. There's new stages for the story mode, although the story itself is pretty much just a rehash of the first one. And that's really about it. It's pretty much basically Splatoon Deluxe. I don't know why they slapped a 2 on it, but that's really all it is Splatoon Deluxe. It's pretty much mostly just a port of the original Splatoon with a few extra odds and ends added on. But still, it's a lot of fun if you like this kind of game. And it's not your typical shooter because, yeah, you can go around shooting people, but the main objective of most modes is to put as much of your color of ink on the ground and on the map as possible. And that's how whoever wins the game is tallied up. It's based on coverage of the map and who has the most coverage and so on. So while splatting and shooting at your opposing teammates is still a very viable strategy in order to keep them from spreading around their ink, the main objective itself is to spread your ink. And the other game is last year's Call of Duty. We've got Infinite Warfare. Now, if you go back to some of my previous pickups videos, specifically the one where I got Black Ops 3, I mentioned that it was probably going to be the last one I got on console because I'm much more of a PC gamer than I used to be. I have a good PC rig right now that runs games really, really well. So when it comes to first-person shooters, why get a console version? Specifically, why get an Xbox One version when pretty much every single Xbox One game being put out now is also available on PC, either as a multi-platform or as an Xbox console exclusive and Xbox's Play Anywhere initiative. But the fact of the matter was, it was $30 for this. It was $30 for this, and getting it on PC was still going to be $60. And I don't really care about the multiplayer. I never really care about the multiplayer anymore. I just play the campaign. So $30 for a pretty awesome campaign, I felt was pretty worthwhile. And a lot of people, when this game was first announced, were really, really upset for some reason that Call of Duty was kind of doing space stuff. They didn't really like that. I don't know why. It looked interesting enough to me. But it's still a lot of fun, I think. And you have Kit Harington, the guy who plays Jon Snow on Game of Thrones. He's playing the main villain in this. And a couple things that really surprised me was the fact that there are a number of optional missions. They're pretty short scenarios, maybe only like 10, 15 minutes, half an hour at most. But they're pretty short missions, but they're optional, and they're kind of split between ground missions or ship assault missions, I mean, and also starfighter dogfights. So, like, half of your time in the campaign, if you do all the missions, are starfighter dogfights, which I really enjoyed. When it comes to the next game in the franchise, though, World War II, I probably will get that on PC simply because I haven't really played much multiplayer recently, and I don't like paying Microsoft in order to play online games. So I might get World War II when it comes out this fall. I might not. I might wait, at which point I might just get it on Xbox One, but we'll see. And then the last three games in this are games I already have previous copies of, but I picked them up for a specific reason. They are Assassin's Creed, if I can get that angled right, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and Assassin's Creed 2, all on the PS3. Now, when I first started playing these games, I started on the 360. That's what I had at the time. I had a 360 and I had a PC, and my PC wasn't the best at the time. It probably wouldn't have run the games very well. So a lot of the multi-platform games that came out in that era, I played on the 360. However, by the time Assassin's Creed 3 came out, by the time Assassin's Creed Brotherhood came out, the third game in the franchise, not Assassin's Creed 3, funnily enough, I had a PS3. So they had some exclusive missions specifically for the PS3 coming out for Brotherhood, and I figured, you know what? I may as well go ahead and jump to the other system now if they're going to keep doing this, especially since they were making it a yearly release at the time. So from then on, I played Assassin's Creed on PlayStation systems. And then when the PS4 came out, alongside the launch of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, I got that version. See, since it's a cross-generational game, I didn't get the PS3 version, which plays pretty much identical to the PS4 version, just doesn't quite look as good. But now, having these three games, I have every Assassin's Creed game released physically on the PS3. The only one I don't have is Liberation HD, which was a digital-only re-release. So I have all these games on the PS3 now that are available. I have 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations 3, Black Flag, and Rogue. So, and I'm definitely glad to have these now, add them to my collection, and I am looking forward to playing Origins when it comes out this fall. So anyways, that is it for this week. New videos come out every Sunday by 8 a.m. Eastern. You can find them on my channel, of course. I will also be posting new blogs on the 15th of every month. You can find a link to the blog in the description down below. Please leave any comments and suggestions you might have. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.